Young people should experience the intrinsic pleasure of taking a narrative journey, making an emotional connection with a character. This is the spell that reading casts. Picking a story apart before you've experienced its wonder risks destroying the magic. That quote from Catherine Marsh really stuck with me from the article that we read, especially because we've been reading Two Can Keep a Secret. She emphasizes the importance of not overanalyzing or picking a book apart too early, but instead allowing a reader to get fully immersed in the story, because it connects to the broader issue of censorship, reminding us of how many authors have had their work challenged simply because of the powerful, sometimes uncomfortable experiences their stories invite readers into. Growing up in small town Arkansas, I had kind of a unique perspective on this. My mom was a very forward-thinking middle and high school English teacher. So I used to help her put together her banned books week bulletin boards. So from a very young age, I saw firsthand how often books do get challenged and how important those books usually are. I remember her reading out loud books like that had been challenged even by the local school board. But she would get them so hooked on the characters that it really made a difference. But anyway, that's why I've always been really against censorship, especially when it comes to what kids are allowed to read. There are just too many different lived experiences for us to say that something is universally not appropriate for a certain age. Like, what might seem too heavy or uncomfortable for one reader, for me or you, might be exactly what another, like what that kid needed. That's what they needed to hear. That's kind of where Marsh's argument like connects to the book Two Can Keep a Secret, because she talks about how reading is supposed to make these emotional connections and how we need to read the full story, how it lets readers see themselves in the characters or understand people who are different from them. But when we start filtering books too much or analyzing them to take a test before students can actually experience them, we take away that magic. They don't have the chance to build the relationship with the characters. In McManus's novel, there are definitely themes that some adults might find concerning, like family trauma and substance abuse, sex, anxiety. But those same themes are incredibly real. Like, for example, the main character's relationship with her mother, who's in rehab, adds this layer of emotional depth that a lot of readers might relate to. I mean, even specifically here in our own hometowns, there's a lot of issues with substance abuse, especially that kids are dealing with. There's a moment shortly into chapter 19 where she reflects on the little broken porcelain tchotchke on her grandma's shelf. She says, it didn't occur to me that some of the sadness might have been for my mother, for another cracked girl broken and pieced clumsily back together, still standing, but not the same. And later, during a really intense moment, I think I wrote this quote down. I want to say... It was at the end of chapter 28. After the whole revolution with the father, and she's like, it kind of sounds like she's having a panic attack. She says, it's too much to take in. Voices buzz around me. I should probably listen. I'm sure they're saying something important and meaningful, but I can't hear the words clearly. Everything is white noise. My palms are sweating. My knees are shaking. My lungs feel like they've shrunk and can only hold spoonfuls of air at a time. I'm getting so dizzy and I'm afraid I'm going to pass out in the middle of the Rodriguez's living room. And maybe the worst thing about it all is how horribly, childishly, and desperately I want my mom right now. Like, those last couple of lines hit hard, and for some kids, they might hit really hard, especially for those who are dealing with similar situations at home. Like, how many of our students are quietly dealing with a parent struggling with addiction? Probably more than we realize. So what happens if that quiet 12-year-old in your class reads this book and suddenly feels seen? What if they realize that their experience isn't something that they have to go through alone? They're not the first one to ever go through this. That kind of connection is what Marsha's talking about too. But she argues that you have to read the full story to make that connection. I can't just read this paragraph and you feel Ellery. Like, would the same kid feel heard and understood from a few paragraphs, or would they need to know that character? That's the magic of reading. And if we censor books like this because they're too uncomfortable, we risk taking that away. We risk telling students that their experiences are too much or too inappropriate to even be acknowledged in the classroom, in literature, in their life. It's obviously not a new issue. Like, books have always been challenged, especially books for kids, for being too dark, too honest, or too different. But those are the very qualities that make them meaningful.